Well, my favorite was when at some point, as a taunt, because you know how when you get so worked up, and you kind of like lose your wit, you're just like all rage.
Yeah.
At some point, she says to Jacob Bonema, "Sarah Leach, speed dialer," and everyone's just like,
she is so weird. She's just
and I was
weird.
like, "Ooh, burn."
She is just a weird person. You know
Oh
what?
crap! He's
I don't.
us.
Go ahead, Gretchen. I don't care. This is 2 J's in a Pod. I'm Mary Ellen Murphy.
I'm Sarah Leach.
I had somebody. I received a message yesterday, and it was not kind, and it was disgusting. And I am
Like about your work?
about my work. I hate America. I'm a horrible person. I'm a terrible journalist. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to find the way of the Lord. I mean, just all this stuff. And I'm just...
Oh, I didn't know that the Lord had a journalism degree.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.
I didn't know. Does Jesus have a journalism degree? Did he go to college? Yeah.
It's unbelievable to me.
Well, it's because we've created this whole like moment in time where we have like a fully fledged generation of people who think that just because they have hard opinions about things that it matters.
Yeah.
And they don't. I mean, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one.
That's a fact.
And everyone thinks that because I don't like what I see or like what I hear or like what you do or like how you look, then I have the right to mansplain to you how you should be and how you should look and how you should speak and how you should work. I mean, that's literally our entire American culture right now.
And then I took the bait yesterday. Somebody that I respect put out a post about the No Kings protest and said that it was just the Democrats just did it because they were mad because they lost. And I said, well, that's not what the No Kings protest was for.
Correct.
And then I said, I got to ask you a question. You went over to Vietnam in '77 after the war, and you told me that you did that because you wanted to help bring your brothers back, which is very noble.
Sure.
Let me ask you how you can support somebody who is was it 5 deferments that Trump had? Did you know that...
Well, bone spurs are very serious.
Yeah. Did you know in the divorce decrees from Ivana and Marla Maples, listen to this, his children, if they joined the military or the Peace Corps, they would be cut off financially. What does that tell you about Donald Trump? What does that tell you? So this person went off on me and told me I needed help, and then all these people, and I was like, why did I take the bait? Why did I do that? I was just so disgusted.
Yeah, I've had like a couple of conversations with people that are kind of in like psychological spaces, people who studied like, sociologists who write books about this kind of stuff. And I think that, remember during the first Trump administration where we were seeing all of those news articles where the first set of holidays came around in 2017, and it was like how to have challenging conversations with somebody who you have, political opposition to during the Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, I do remember.
And now we're just like, everyone's just flipping tables. We don't even bother anymore. But I think that there's some credibility to the fact that sometimes when people get radicalized, it's very difficult for the average person to be able to have a breakthrough, a substantial breakthrough in dialogue. And so I'm not trying to say ignore challenging conversations, but also just sort of, for your own mental health and self-care. I mean, recognize a lost cause and just say, I'm sorry, I can't have this conversation with you. This is too hot. I don't think that you're really interested in having a rational conversation. I'm going to go over here.
And he never answered the question how he could support somebody who had 5 deferments for the Vietnam War. He threw it back at me and said, well, didn't Biden this is what they do.
Yeah.
Didn't Biden do this? How can you support? He never answered the question.
Yeah, it's the what about syndrome.
So I said, I'm done. And I don't think we're ever going to come back from this. I think it's done. I think it's over. I think that we will be fighting for the rest of our lives to tell the truth and to get the truth out there. We will be fighting for the rest of our lives. It's over. It's over.
I mean, you know how I feel about this.
I know.
I mean, I think that there's some signs of encouragement, though, because we have people. I know that there's a lot of bad things that are happening in terms of the journalism world right now. We've got a lot of control at the federal level and interference, with First Amendment issues and rights of the press and everything. But simultaneously, we're also seeing one of the largest influx of students enrolling in journalism programs. I think that we're discounting and underestimating the youth movement. And I know that some of them are going to be supportive of Republicans and far-right policies.
Sure.
I mean, that's just the nature of how,
course.
Humans work. But I do also look at this with a little bit of a grain of salt. And I think that through one's own personal life journey, eventually you have to reconcile your own experiences with what you've been, kind of told to believe in your early years. And a lot of people go through that transformation in one way or another. I think that, it's not like we have a choice. We're here. Unless we're all going to self-eradicate, we're here. We have to live through it. And I choose to remain hopeful.
Well, that's great. I think that's great.
You're like, that's nice.
Well, I don't. Sorry.
Look at you and your optimism. And I'm not even like normally, and I'm not, my friends would not describe me as an optimist.
No, I wouldn't either. I got 8 hours of sleep last night. I took.
What was that like?
Well, here's the thing. I take my Tylenol PM, but
tell me everything.
I also popped a melatonin. I haven't been sleeping the last couple of months. You and I are both on the Affordable Care Act. You and I have to have some really big, serious conversations with whatever. There's a lot going on for you and I, and we don't know what the future holds, and it's very, very frightening.
Right.
It's really frightening, and so I slept last night. So I'm like, oh gosh. I feel so good. And I just wanted to throw this out there. The way that we broadcast at the radio station, we use the internet. So if the internet goes down, we have no phones. We have no signal. AT&T cut a wire, and half the building at 1 South Harbor was without internet and phones for over 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Our engineer from WGVU came in, Jimmy rigged this thing. Yesterday, I'm doing the show. It was like a shoestring, like the shoestring in the cans.
In a can.
I'm Mary Ellen Murphy. It was like, but he Jimmy rigged it, and we were able to broadcast with a Wi-Fi hotspot.
That's awesome.
I know. So a lot of people don't realize that, like, your signal will come through the internet, phones, all of that.
Well, that reminds me of a time. Remember when I told you that I did an internship overseas in college?
Yeah.
And so I arrive in Beijing. It's January. It's during Chinese New Year. And I have not had any contact with my family. I've been traveling for 2 days. There was huge delays with the plane, and then we get there, and then there was a bunch of fog, and there was like a car crash on the freeway, and
gosh.
So I didn't end up getting into my apartment that was going to be my apartment for the next 4 months until, it was like 3 a.m. And so I don't even know how to call my family and operate an international phone. I get to work the following day. I've only had like about 4 hours of sleep. And that's when they tell us that the internet is down because a fishing trolley had somehow snapped on the cable on the sea floor. And we could not even email our families. And I was like, what is happening?
Oh, my gosh.
And so I didn't. And what's funny is that, I hope my aunt isn't listening, but she was like, oh, I wasn't worried. She hadn't heard from me in like 4 days after she ships me off to China. Literally.
I'm telling you.
It all worked out.
Oh, all right. It's just a lot going on in national news. I just don't take the bait. Just don't take the bait.
Well, and it's not even just, it's not a cop-out. You can say a couple of things for your own self-satisfaction so that you don't feel like you're, somehow avoiding something, and being a coward. I know that a lot of people get worried about optics about that sort of thing. But you can just say something like, I'm sorry, you're kind of coming in hot. And I'm not sure if I can really have this conversation with you unless, like, you're really going to commit to, a civil conversation. And usually by shaming people in that way, they either will just not respond, which, great, then good talk. And or they will come back or they will double down. And then it literally just justifies what you said. And then you sort of have the moral superiority in that moment.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm not taking that. Yeah, okay. Let's move on to county news.
Let's.
I don't even know where to start with this.
This will be the extended episode of
I think so. Okay, hearing Gretchen Cosby's voice again. Oh, I had like a flashback, and I mean, she lives in.
It's interesting.
You live in her head.
It's interesting that you're triggered because I'm the one that she kept talking about.
No, it triggers me. Her voice just triggers me, and I just remember the way that she acted and carried herself. I didn't care for it. I didn't think that she was genuine. And I'm allowed to have my opinion on her.
That's
so there
true.
you have it.
That's true.
Where do we start?
Well, let's remind the listeners that we are talking about the newly released closed session minutes from the County Board of Commissioners December 10th, 2024 meeting. That is when, and these are two separate closed sessions that happened on the same day, and they were to negotiate severance agreements with former executive aide Jordan Epperson and then with interim administrator Benjamin Wetmore.
Who has 9 kids.
Yeah, wow.
And drove 2.5 hours every day to work. He commuted, supposedly.
Hey, if I had 9 kids, I probably want to be 2.5 hours away from them too. But
he commuted every day. There's not enough hour. He was putting in 12-hour days and then had a 6-hour commute. The timing doesn't. The time.
I know.
Okay, go ahead.
I know.
All right, whatever. Whatever.
So basically, how we got here is after these severance agreements were approved in December, and it was sort of these 11th hour, surprise agreements, and this was in the waning weeks of the Ottawa Impact then led board, and the November election had already happened. They knew that their far right group was going to be losing the majority going into 2025 to the new commissioners that were coming in. So they get these agreements approved. And then immediately there was a lawsuit that is challenging the legal validity. And at the time, they didn't really know what was discussed in closed session because there's a room in the law under the Open Meetings Act where you are allowed to go into closed session as a public body where the public doesn't get to see or hear what you're talking about if it meets certain legal exemptions. And one of them is if you're considering dismissing an employee, like if somebody were to be accused of misconduct or violating policy or et cetera, et cetera. What is odd here is that both Epperson and Wetmore requested to be heard in closed session for dismissal, even though no charges or allegations have been lodged against them. So that was one of the big red flags for a local resident, Dan Zimmer, who lives in Port Sheldon Township. And he hired Sarah Riley Howard, who is the prolific attorney who has sued the county 700 times and has been fairly successful in every effort. And so they sue within a matter of a couple of days to challenge the validity of this, claiming that the board violated the Open Meetings Act because they did not disclose the real reason why they were going into the closed session, that they were disingenuous about the fact that, that these people were going to be dismissed or imminently dismissed. And then they also challenged under the Open Meetings Act when the board came out of closed session both times and voted to approve the agreements, the board did not exactly say what they were approving, which is what they are required to do under state law. So this winds through the courts, for a year, and there were other things that were in that lawsuit that we've talked about in previous episodes. And so when we finally get to September of this year, the plaintiff offers a settlement offer, and he said, "Look, I'm not looking for a giant payout. I just give me, $500, which is what the statute demands if I am successful in court. Pay for my attorney's fees to bring this to court, and then disclose what happened in those closed session minutes because that's why we're here." And the new board now agreed to the complete, opposition of the now 4 remaining Ottawa Impact members that are still on the board. And once that decision was made, though, it had to go back to the court, and the trial judge that was overseeing these proceedings
in Grand Rapids, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Had to then issue an order, ordering that the meeting minutes get released. So the body, even though it had said, yes, we will disclose our own minutes, they needed that court order in order to do that, to that mechanism.
Right.
So that took several weeks.
So all of a sudden they show up on the county website.
So they get posted on Monday morning, and Ottawa County lost its mind. It's like, I think both of them are each close to an hour and 20 minutes, somewhere in that realm. And it's interesting to me because they are very different conversations. Yes, they are of similar nature, and yes, they had a similar outcome, but the conversations that happened were very different in terms of tone. So first we start with Epperson. Joe Moss, Chair Moss, says that there is a claim that Epperson has a claim against county HR for improperly handling his personal private information that subsequently gets leaked to me by name many times. And that I took that information and published it at the Holland Sentinel because I was working there at the time. And that because that information was published, that somehow he doesn't say the word doxing, but that's the implication is that somehow he got harassed because that information was made public. Now, I just want to note that it is legal to publish somebody's resume. Has anyone ever heard of the site LinkedIn?
Yeah, thank you. Hello. Come on, guys.
Now, personal information, and there is case law about this in the state of Michigan, where we had to go through this a couple of times at the Sentinel and my other travels in journalism. Every once in a while, you get like a city manager search or a school district superintendent search, and you get like 3 or 4 finalists that are identified, and then you want to know who's applying to be your next leader of whatever the thing is. These are public bodies. And that is important because we're only talking about public bodies in this context. I can't figure out like who's going to be like the shift manager at Hayworth. I can only use the Freedom of Information Act as a tool because these positions are paid with public tax dollars. So the public has a right to know how those funds are being expended. And you have certain rights as a citizen to know who is working for you in your government. And that includes school districts. So having gone through this many times before, I knew what was appropriate to publish and what was not appropriate to publish. And the county had actually fulfilled a FOIA request and gave me all of the resumes. Well, technically, they gave them to Dan Zimmer because he's the one who made the request, and then he shared them with me. And I think that's an important note is that this was filed as a Freedom of Information Act request in, I think, July of 2023. And the county's own corporation counsel released these documents. HR didn't leak anything. This all went through lawyers that you pay. What? And then the information that was published, these resumes were also appropriately redacted. So that means that their home address, their email address, their cell phone numbers have that big black line, that bar, so that you can't read it. And then, because it would be sort of inappropriate because what happens if this person doesn't get, the job? Then that would, be problematic. And I want to point out a third point is that none of this information was published until after he started working for the county and was an active employee.
Okay.
So in this closed session, Moss and Commissioner Gretchen Cosby, who's no longer on the board, she didn't win re-election, they sort of like tag team this conversation and sort of try to spin this tale of the fact that information was somehow published, that it caused harm and damage to Mr. Epperson, where he was no longer going to be able to seek future gainful employment.
Oh, sure.
This 24-year-old who had, who only worked as basically an administrative assistant for the county for a year.
Right. Yeah. And
also, all of it is true. It's accurate information. It's not inaccurate. It's not defamatory. I don't know what we're doing here. But instead of hearing that conversation, what I hear is sort of like this sort of nonsensical, well, can we see the complaint? No, you can't see the complaint. Well, can we see the report that an attorney worked on? No, he didn't file a report. And frankly, he probably doesn't want to file a report because it might say things in there that we don't want to get out.
This is bizarre. This is really bizarre.
And then they say, well, can we talk to him on the phone? Yeah, he's not available.
Oh, how convenient.
Well, can we talk to county HR? No, it wouldn't be appropriate to bring them into this conversation because they're the subject of the investigation. So you can see how we can't do that.
Oh my gosh.
And so we just go round and round and find, and I have to give some credit to Commissioner Jacob Bonema, who, his origin story started with Ottawa Impact. He was a member. He ran with them in 2022, but he split with them shortly after 23, after we started getting sued all over the place. And he is the one to say, this is just insane. I'm not going to be bullied into giving out money to your friends. And that's sort of like the tone of that conversation. And it goes round and round. But at a certain point, I think that all the non-Ottawa impact commissioners see the writing on the wall, and the OI majority has the votes to push through the severance agreement no matter what.
Exactly.
And so they're just trying to get like the lowest number they possibly can. And so everyone is just sort of resigned to the outcome at that point. But yes, this complaint has never been made public. Now, I think it will be. And I only say that because I filed my own Freedom of Information Act request on September 23rd after Commissioner Jordan Jaritsma discussed this in commissioner comments about his deep concerns about how this was handled. Because at that point, we didn't have the closed session minutes, but the current commissioners had listened to them.
They had listened to him, yeah.
And he indicated that there were a lot of questions about how this all went down. And so then I filed for the documents that he said that he was referencing and he was reading into the public record.
Right.
I was denied access to those documents because they were saying, well, technically these are covered under attorney-client privilege.
Right.
However, the board will subsequently be voting at its next meeting to waive attorney-client privilege. And if the board does do that, then feel free to resubmit this request and that will be made available to you. Now, given the fact that they accepted the settlement agreement and they had this appetite to release the closed session minutes, which is the most controversial part of this entire conversation, I don't think that they're going to just not then give the rest of the story, which is the complaint, any investigative notes that, the attorney that was supposedly, investigating this complaint had. Apparently he has submitted an affidavit to the county that we haven't seen yet that basically says, I never completed an investigation.
I don't believe
it was halted by Mr. Moss before I could complete the investigation. I have been told that I apparently recommended a settlement agreement and that this would protect the county's liability and its interests. I never did any of that. He asked for a blank template for a severance agreement, and I have no idea who filled it out. Like, that's basically what went down. And I think that we're going to see the rest of those documents next week. Wow. We haven't even gotten to Mr. Wetmore yet, but I will just, I won't even go into a long story because honestly, he had no claim. There was no complaint. There was no investigation. They all just get into the room again, and he's like, him being Moss, okay, well, he wants this number.
Oh, my gosh.
And so then it just becomes a conversation about what is appropriate to pay out an interim administrator who's only been on the job for 2 months. I mean, they didn't even bother talking about why they were even paying him anything at all.
Unbelievable.
Because at that point, I mean, they knew what was happening. I mean, they were powerless to stop it.
Jesus. I'm speechless. And then you've got Kristen Megan Kelly. Is she a lawyer now?
I mean, well, again, what she was to go back to our first conversation in this podcast, I mean, opinions are like assholes.
There you go. Yeah, now she's speaking on behalf of the county.
Well, whenever she gets a strong opinion, I mean, her very extensive knowledge of, herself clearly dictates that she should be a media pundit.
I am so onto her. She blocked me. I have known people like her for about 30 years. There's not one conspiracy theory she can run by me that I haven't already heard. I'm onto her. People like that, they line themselves up with other grifters. They find somebody to finance their grifting, and that's what they do.
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and I'm going to let the public decide as these stories continue to unfold. In terms of what my observations are and what I can provide from previous reporting that sort of ties all of it together. But I have my own opinions in terms of how this happened and why. But I don't want to necessarily influence the readership, in that way. But honestly, that's where we need to be showing that restraint, right? Is that that's what the KMKs of the world don't do.
Okay.
And they just go out there and just tell you, well, clearly this says this, and you're dumb if you don't believe that, or you're dumb if you do believe that. I'm not going to insult the intelligence of the listenership.
This is something.
It really is.
But at the end of the day, was anything illegal
done?
That's
the question.
The question.
I have not seen any indication of a crime being committed yet.
There you go.
I am no lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I've talked to a few about this. I know that if you represent yourself as an attorney and you're not an attorney, that is illegal. Moss did not do that. if you're basically just lying and saying that somebody told you something and you're misrepresenting what that person does, I mean, it's possible that professional might be able to sue him in, a civil court, for misrepresentation or, damages in some way, but that's not a crime.
Okay.
It could be referred out to the county prosecutor, who would then obviously, kind of kick the can, because as we've seen with the courts, they don't really want to get involved so much in this mess in the county. So they would request a special prosecutor. It could be referred to the Attorney General's office, who sometimes investigates public officials for malfeasance, which, I mean, you're not going to find an outcome if you have an outcome for like 5 years.
Could a citizen say, my tax dollars are paying for these severance packages and I think it was done wrong. I'm going to sue Joe Moss personally?
I think anyone can sue anyone for anything.
Okay.
But you have to have standing.
Yeah.
That is the big threshold for a case like that. But a average citizen could contact the AG's office and request an investigation into this.
Ah, okay.
It doesn't have to come from some official. I mean, the county board can vote to do it itself. I don't know if they have the political appetite to do that. I think that they're hoping that the public and the media sort of sort itself out. I think the only other option would be they could, as a board, vote to censure Moss, which was a preferred tactic of his leadership.
Sure was.
Over the past 2 years. They also could strip him of committee assignments as a punitive measure, so that he doesn't have as much of a say in the business affairs of the county. And because the county commissioners converted from 2-year terms to 4-year terms, starting with the term that began this year.
Yes.
The recall option is on the table once you get 1 full year into the term. So I think that would be January 2nd or 3rd of 2026. Moss would be eligible to be recalled, which, as we saw in 2023, is quite an extensive undertaking. Yeah.
Wow, that lot went down on December 10th of 2024. Benjamin Wetmore's wife called into a meeting. And I remember I had Roger.
She gave public comment.
Okay. I had Roger Bergman in the studio, and we were talking about that. And she was talking about how he worked 10, 12-hour days, and then he had a 2.5, 3-hour commute each way. So Bergman and I are looking at each other. He's doing the math. There's not enough hours in the day for him to do the job. So he was either staying in town or she was lying.
I also work, 36-hour days.
I mean, come on. And so somebody should the amount of children that somebody has go into thinking about how much you're going to give them for a severance agreement?
Well,
does that apply? I'm just curious. I don't know if it does or not.
There are so many one-liners that, I mean, we don't even have enough time in this
I know
cast,
we don't.
But maybe next week we can dive more into it when we get the rest of the story. But one of the one-liners that he said was, I'm comfortable with 9 months of pay, 1 month for every child that he has. And Bonema, now again, I'm just picturing this room because we don't see this. It's just the audio. So we can't see the body language. We can't see, the eye contact, people fidgeting like that. Sometimes that's important, right? So even though we know way more than we ever knew before, we don't quite have like the full vibe of the room. And, but Bonema says on the audio, I don't care if he's got 9 kids or 0 kids. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. And, that's true. What does that? What's the point? You're talking about a position and an employee and whether or not they did a good job. But when we start bringing in all of these like emotional factors, it muddies the water, which I think was sort of the intention, so that so it overcomplicates it, and then eventually you hear people like Roger Bergman, who retired at the end of last year and didn't run again, and former Commissioner Chris Kleinians, who was the second Democrat and didn't get reelected in November. Both of them are just sort of resigned at the end of the conversation, and they're just like, I just want out of this room. Like they, I don't know how the public will perceive that, because I think that some people will understand. I think some people will be frustrated that they didn't fight more. I'm not going to personally weigh in on that because it's not my job, but. No. But I guess the big takeaway is that government is complicated, and remember that all of these people are not professional politicians.
That's true.
Some of them are armchair professional politicians, and I think that Ottawa Impact is an example of that, where they fancy themselves professional politicians. But professional politicians would not make these kinds of tactical errors that would result in where we are today.
Is Gretchen Cosby, is her name going to come up on this? Because she seemed to know a lot about what was going on with Jordan Epperson. She seemed really invested.
That's another thing that I personally saw as a big red flag, is that both Moss and Cosby openly admit in various ways that they have had conversations with Mr. Epperson specifically about a potential severance with him and what he is looking for in terms of negotiation. And I think that Cosby having that conversation is at worst inappropriate. But when you have the board chair having that conversation, and everyone in the room and everyone in that county building knows that the board chair has a majority on the board and has the votes to follow through with what his will is. You are then kind of tiptoeing into some dangerous territory because you are now negotiating on behalf of the board. And I think that that's something that an independent investigation should vet and thoroughly explore, because this is not the first time that we've had this brought against Moss. He's also currently embroiled in a lawsuit with Kleinians, who says that Moss intentionally tried to get him fired from Michigan State University's extension office back in late 2023, early 2024.
And that lawsuit
is still ongoing. I think, as far as I can tell, when I interviewed Kleinians when he was announcing his state Senate bid, he said that they were trying to get some sort of maybe potential mediation going. We haven't had a court date in a long time. There's been a lot of conferences, but it's a little bit complicated because he sued the board. And then after an initial trial in federal court in Lansing took place in 24, testimony from MSU officials basically revealed that Moss's actions definitely factored into a lot of what their conversations were. And so then Kleinians amended his complaint to sue Moss personally. That now you have like this sort of triangle instead of a straight line. And so you have to have negotiations with two different defendants now. So now you got the county involved and you got MSU involved.
This is exhausting. Wow, you know your stuff, lady.
Well, it's only like I've lived it and breathed it for almost 3 years. But
yeah, people can read the latest story at OttawaNewsNetwork.org.
Yes.
The latest story is there. My website is WGHN.com. We don't have a lot of time. I got a side hustle, so I'm learning all these new things. Let me tell you. I'm learning how to file. I'm learning how to take checks and staple them to an invoice. These are things I've never done before. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not an office person, so I'm learning.
I can't balance a checkbook.
Okay.
I've never been taught how to do that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, now I don't have to because of digital banking.
Okay. But I didn't realize that radio is chaos and the whole other world is not.
Is it satisfying to kind of like have that organizational time?
I love it. I go into this office and I do my thing and I work with like-minded people and it's calm and wonderful. And I'll be able to pay off some bills and it's been wonderful. So yeah, I'm filing and doing things like that and it's just so different. Yesterday I went there and I had jeans on and I forgot I wore jeans and they're like, not a problem.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
And so I'm not used to normal workplaces. Wait, where they provide water and coffee for you. Oh, wait, there's a fridge.
It's like a lifetime of Stockholm Syndrome.
Oh my God. They even have a machine that makes ice cubes. I'm like, this is
that's some fancy stuff.
With this place. But anyway, I just wanted to
look
throw
at you,
that out.
high roller.
Look at me. She's a roller, a high roller, baby. That's a song by April Wine. I think we should probably wrap this up. We haven't even really gotten into Benjamin Wetmore and what went down.
Well, I'll just say I'll skip to the end. It was more about the number than it was, the cause. There was never any actual cause. They just said, yes, so he's got some claims too. So, okay. And then everyone's like, all right, 3 months or 12 months.
I did not cover the No Kings protest this second time around, but I did do a little story on the website. I don't think that millions of people were paid to protest. It's clear that people are upset and people are letting their voice be heard.
Well, if they were paying, I would have been there.
Yeah, no doubt. I do that. I'm kidding. Please, nobody's paying anybody. And come on.
I love how that is like such a ridiculous notion. I mean, like, how would you even be able to hide on that scale, that level of payout? Where are those funds coming from? Like, who's getting bankrupted by this?
Did you see, was it Denver? It was like some old guy. I'm going to call him a boomer. A really old guy screaming at the protesters with his Trump hat. And then somebody grabbed the Trump hat from him and he starts chasing him and he falls flat on his face. He gets back up. He starts screaming at him again. He falls on his face again. And I thought to myself, dude, you're 70 years old. Why are you harassing 20-year-olds at a protest? I mean, honestly.
But also taking somebody's hat.
Well, that was wrong. They shouldn't have done that. No, that was wrong. I'm saying that was wrong.
But then I would not pursue. I mean, it's a
hat. He was saying really nasty. Or it might have been glasses. They took something off of his head, which was wrong.
Right. But then contact the police and then have those people arrested rather than hurting yourself.
He ran after them, fell, got back up, yelled some more, ran again, fell again. It was just, I just thought, you're old, dude. It's not a good look.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, that's like when emotions and
sit down, boomer,
and rage, it just overtakes logic, right? And then we're not rational humans anymore.
No, I know.
We're just animals.
What one last thing did you have to mention about the county? Do you remember?
Oh, right. So what? And I can't be certain.
Okay.
But I would bet dollars to donuts that pretty soon, if not next week, for this monthly meeting that we have, I think that we're going to see. Remember that $4 million settlement that was but never was for Adeline Hamblin?
Yeah, and that you were called a liar. I was called a liar. Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and then there was testimony taken by Clerk Roebuck, Justin Roebuck, essentially where they closed the courtroom. And took his testimony privately. And I was at that hearing and was, one of the reporters kicked out of that hearing. And then we were brought in. And then a couple of weeks later, we get a ruling from the judge saying a $4 million settlement deal was reached, but it was legally unenforceable because the county ineptly approved the agreement. So it couldn't be enforced. Now, then Moss goes around and basically says, the media is, creating this false narrative, even though we know that it happened, right? I published some of the settlement agreement terms that were provided to me. Those are still on the internet if you want to read them. And the Sentinel, I went to my company leadership at the time and I said, I think that we should challenge this in court. And so I was the editor of the Sentinel at the time. And so we sued to have the transcript released. Now, that has been winding its way through the courts for over a year, and I'm pretty sure that within the next couple of days, but at the very latest, probably next month, we're going to see the board probably take similar action as it did in this case with the closed sessions, and probably will release the closed session minutes from that case as well.
Okay.
And then we'll see who's lying.
Okay, there you go. This has been 2 J's in a Pod. Be kind. Oh, go to Fall Fest this weekend, Saturday, Grand Haven. Go to Fashion Forward Consignments and look at our display, 2 J's in a Pod, and I'll see you Saturday.
See you there.
Okay, bye.